Hey, Natalie, how are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you joining me to look once again at campaign finance data for Proposition HH.
I'm glad here to talk about it. People are starting to see all of the big money that's being contributed to tell falsehoods about Proposition HH. So it's good to know where is the money coming from that has been called by media. Some of these political ads are paying for from this money. Uh, Unbelievable how many lies they could pack into like 15 seconds from the proponents of HH. So let's take a look at the money behind the scenes.
Awesome, wonderful. I completely agree. It's so deceptive. And yeah, I think looking at the data, looking at the money, where's it coming from, really gives people a better picture of what's actually going on here. This tells us more of the story, more of the truth behind this terrible ballot initiative. All right. So let's dig in here. As always, we're looking at tracking campaign finance data through the Secretary of State's Tracer website. This is where campaign finance reporting is required to be uploaded, or reports that require to be filed every so often. So that's where the information's there for people who want to do some research on their own. So the issue committee, as we mentioned previously in the first video we did, that is supporting Proposition HH is called Property Tax Relief Now, a very deceptive title, of course, for a very deceptive ballot measure. Registered agent Tracy Moore, we went into that in the first video. We won't repeat that now, but some interesting background there. So this group, Property Tax Relief Now, according to the most recent campaign finance data, which was from October 16th, 2023, so just a little bit ago, shows that they've received $1.6 million in contributions to this committee and have spent almost 500,000 of it as of October 16th, leaving them with a balance of nearly $1.2 million to spend during this last leg of this election cycle. Natalie, how does that compare to some of the grassroots efforts fighting back against Proposition HH? Was in your opinion?
Well, I'm thankful that there's a coalition, a wide umbrella of member organizations, everywhere, National Federation of Independent Business to Advance Colorado America's Prosperity, Independence Institute, Colorado Union of Taxpayers, Tabor Foundation, Tabor Committee, that are not it's dollar wise not a total like David and Goliath kind of a situation. There's some comparison, but I don't. We've still got quite a bit of time left, and the reports can be filed all the way through December. So at the end of the day, it's not a comfortable situation to see that the proponents are spending this much money on it and using falsehoods. Frankly, I mean, they seriously have been called out on the propaganda that they're trying to put out there that is just outright fabrication. Um, with that, I had expected the proponents to put out 5.3 million, just based off history over years and years. So with them being now at close to $2 million, I'm not sure how far I'll be off on theirs, and I really can't say how much more is going to come from opponents, which is why it's really, really important right now, even though we're talking about finances, for anybody watching this video to share with their neighbor, read about this, that the ballot question is very, very deceiving. I had a neighbor today approach me and he says, I remembered you told me a couple weeks ago, don't vote on anything until I come over and check with you. He says, so I just got my ballot. I'm coming over to check with you because I knew he wouldn't quite remember. And and I told him what it was, and he goes, "Well, oh, I just read that, but it sounded so good." So it's really important that people are grabbing some flyers off the internet. There's multiple sources, sharing the word, because these finances, yeah, that's part of what's being portrayed to voters. But the door-to-door connection, just like my neighbor who knows me, trusts me, and I got a list. Anyway, I'm sorry to get off track, but thought it was worth mentioning. It's important
Oh,
while we're
definitely.
talking about money here. This battle is really going to come down to communication. Do not fall for this totally baloney ballot question. And there was a recent news story I'm not going to go into depth because I'll interrupt you. So go ahead. They've raised 2 million, and I suspect they got deeper pockets. They got Polis behind this.
Yeah,
Plus,
let's
as we'll show more here about that.
definitely. Sorry to interrupt you there. I was just going to say, let's see who some of these proponents are. Who are these people shelling out such big money to influence our local property taxes and take away our tax refund money? So the most recent, one of the most recent reports here was from October 3rd. So this is a regularly reported campaign finance report. We're just going to look at contributions of money that has come in. So during that reporting period, we saw Education Reform Now Advocacy, $200,000. Now, I did make a note there on the right side for under explanation that they had previously received $100,000 back in July 7th. We covered that on the first video. So I think that aggregate number is off by $100,000, which is quite a bit, of course. Second line there, National Education
Not for them.
Associate.
That's just one check. Just one check. That's all.
Oh
Go
yeah,
ahead.
$100,000
All
very
right.
easy to overlook for these people,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
For grassroots, are like, what? But for them, it's like, just another check. Go ahead.
Just pocket change, right? Uh,
That's right. Reach into the cushions. Hey, Pat, you got something in the cushions?
yeah. Oh, we didn't realize there's $100,000 just sitting here. Uh, National Education
We're
Association
laughing
special
about it.
account.
This is not funny. Okay, go
No,
ahead.
it's not. No, it's not. It just shows the moneyed interest. I mean, this group's from New York, the National Education Association, of course, from Washington, D.C. This is their special account. They've already contributed $100,000 from a different account back in August 23rd. The
So that's
Conscious
like
Bay
looking at
Company.
that's like looking in the couch, and then they go over and look in the love seat. They got it all over the place. All right, go ahead.
Oh, just floating around. The Conscious Bay Company from Boulder. We'll talk a little bit about them. $25,000. Boldly Forward. We didn't mention them last time, but we'll bring them up this time here. And of course, they're showing that some of the money, this non-monetary itemized contributions for general consulting. So they've been providing in-kind donations with their very generous campaign consulting. We'll look at who these people are and maybe why they're doing this. Looking at the 1016 report, so this is the most recent finance report here. Just the larger donors. There's some smaller donors. I kind of cut it out from the Tracer website just to look at the bigger ones. Education Reform Now Advocacy again, so that bringing that aggregate to 350,000. 1630 Fund from Washington D.C. We'll talk about them. $250,000 total. John Icard, who's actually the chairman of the board for First Bank. People might be surprised that this person is so politically active, pushing 10,000 plus another 25,000, so $35,000 of his own money in support of these efforts. Monarch Casino Blackhawk, $25,000. And OLP Management Company, another $25,000. So we'll get into some of these here going forward. Now, those are the regular reports that were filed with the Secretary of State on Tracer, but there's also some major contributor reports. So these committees are required by state law to report when they receive a check above a certain amount on a report within 24 hours, I believe. Does that sound right, Natalie?
Yeah, for anything above 1,000 or more.
So on 1016, they filed this report here saying they got $5,000 from the Colorado Fund for Children in Public Education, bringing the aggregate amount to $100,000. Wow. For creative content development, whatever that might mean. We'll look at who this Colorado Fund for Children in Public Education group is. Another major contributor report from 1018. That's when it was filed. Money was received on 1017. $50,000 from Alterra Mountain Shared Services Inc. We'll talk a little bit about them as well. A lot of you are probably familiar with this organization, even if you don't know it by that name. Another major contributor report from 1018, John Bernhardt from Pivot Energy, $10,000. Patrick Hamill from Oakwood Homes, another $10,000. Makes me wonder if they had some sort of event on the 17th that maybe generated all of this money coming in, 10,000 and more. So very interesting to see. The pockets were opened on the 17th. On 1020 major contributor report, $50,000 from this group out of Beaverton, Oregon, campaign for great public schools. Wow, $50,000 from an organization of Oregon to influence Colorado's property taxes. Wow. So let's dig in now to some of these organizations, some of these companies, some of these groups. So Conscious Bay Company, I had not heard of them before, but they put in $25,000 in support of Proposition HH, and they are a real estate or asset investment firm in Boulder, Colorado, producing economic, social, and environmental returns. Wow. So they are a private equity firm investing in agriculture land, commercial real estate, and of course, they believe in good stewardship, climate forward transformation across the real estate and agricultural sectors. Wow. So it's not too surprising when you read who these people are. This is from their LinkedIn bio that they are aligned with the Democratic establishment here in Colorado. From Boulder, you wonder how much they are involved with Jared Polis and some of these other big Democrats. So taking a look at who is this people? Who are these people? This conscious group here. This is their president. So I looked on their website, found their president of the company, Eli Feldman. Typed his name into Tracer to see who else has he contributed to. Who is this guy? How is he? They're using this company money to support this terrible ballot initiative. Well, it looks like Eli Feldman is no stranger to Colorado's Democratic establishment. Looks like somewhere around $12,000 or so, if all of those are him. I know there might be some other names mixed in there, but clearly he's donated to Phil Weiser, who's our current attorney general, anti-gun, anti-business politician. Dan Pabon, is former state legislator. Dylan Roberts, Michael Doherty, some of these politicians who've been very detrimental to the liberty of Colorado individuals. Any thoughts on this, Natalie?
No, just the continuing threat of the development.
Right. Developers, real estate companies. I mean, these are the people who really want to see Proposition HH pass. And so you got to ask yourself, why? So,
I'm going to chime in after I chime in on that question through the rest.
okay.
And then you
Well,
can share your.
perfect. Perfect. So another big spender here. Now, this was in non-monetary contributions. So for general consulting, Boldly Forward is reported to have contributed $66,875 worth of services in helping Proposition HH committee here. Now, who is Boldly Forward? As you may not be too surprised, this is a Jared Polis organization. So this is a tweet from Jared Polis back in 2018, right after he won the governor's race. Said, quote, "I'm excited to announce Boldly Forward Colorado, our transition committee for the Polis Primavera administration. There's a lot of work to be done in the next 60 days, and we need your help to turn our bold solutions into real results." Now, that boldlyforward.co website is no longer existing, I noticed, which was interesting. You can check that for yourself. But clearly, Boldly Forward was an organization that Jared Polis created to help transition into the governor's office. And now they're fulfilling his agenda of taking away our tax rebate money. Here's an article from the Colorado Sun back then from John Frank on September 2020. Quote, "A nonprofit tied to Colorado Governor Jared Polis shifts focus to advocacy and raises ethic concerns. Boldly Forward Colorado can accept unlimited donations from individuals and corporations to help push Democratic governor's agenda." And clearly, they're still doing this now 3 years later. You can read that article. The URLs there at the bottom. Just a choice quote from that article here. I'll read this quickly. "The Democrat formed Boldly Forward Colorado, a nonprofit organization that can accept unlimited personal and corporate contributions and not disclose its donors." So, this is what people would consider a dark money group. After he won the 2018 election, in order to help him, so Jared Polis, recruit members of his administration and form the policy platform for his first term. Now it's shifted its focus to support efforts to lower the cost of living in Colorado. Yeah, right. Including expanding access for early childhood education. We've seen that a big effort made by Polis. addressing rising healthcare costs. Not sure he's done anything for that. And creating sustainable fiscal reform. Of course, that means taking more of our tax money, it seems. Back to the article here. The language echoes the governor's policy priorities, and his ties to such an organization raise concerns with ethics advocates who suggest it amounts to a, quote, shadow governance group, end quote. The move comes as the governor campaigns for a key 2020 ballot initiative to achieve one of his campaign promises in 2 years before he faces re-election. So yes, Jared Polis has created this group as a shadow governance group, which we can see is still active, still in effect, consulting, working for Proposition HH. Not too surprising when we saw that Tracy Moore, the registered agent for Proposition HH committee, is also the registered agent for Jared Polis's reelection campaign. So this is his crew. This is Jared Polis's group. It'd be very interesting to see who these individuals are, who these campaign consultants are, who's getting this money, and who's working behind the scenes with the governor to push this horrific ballot initiative on Colorado voters.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on this one, Natalie?
Just I'm wondering is when it references that 2020 ballot initiative there at the bottom, if that was referencing Prop EE.
I don't know. We'll have to look at that article to see.
I think it would be so, which then ties into Prop II that's on the ballot this year. So the whole agenda
Ah,
thing. Yeah.
definitely, because
And
EE to raise tobacco taxes for his preschool program, correct?
yes, correct.
And then
Which
II
now,
this year.
now there's questions about performance and money and promises he made that aren't being fulfilled. Gee, is that a common theme? I don't know.
Another
No,
another
government always does what they say they're going to do, right? All right, go ahead.
yeah, another failed government program. Big shocker there.
Well, yeah, and then they want to keep the extra money and continue, and the taxes aren't even done. Anyway, we're not doing II tonight, so go ahead.
Talking about 1630, another big spender. So $250,000 1630 has spent in support of Proposition HH so far this year. This is an article from influencewatch.org. Quote, the 1630 Fund is a left of center lobbying and advocacy organization founded in 2008. 1630 Fund often operates alongside its charitable sister nonprofit New Venture Fund, which provides similar funding and fiscal sponsorship services to center left organizations. Both groups, along with the Hope Well Fund, Windward Fund, and North Fund, are administered by Arabella Advisors. There's a whole series of videos we can do on these people. This is the shadow dark money groups that are some of the biggest heavy hitters in Democratic politics nationally. And not only are these people nationally involved, but they're putting $250,000 just so far that's been reported into this ballot initiative. According to its founding documents, the 1630 Fund was created with seed funding from Americans United for Change, Acorn, U.S. Action, the Sierra Club, and Working America. So that gives you an idea of who these people are, what their priorities are. Continuing on this Influence Watch website, the Atlantic, a left-leaning magazine, has called the 1630 Fund the indisputable heavyweight of Democratic dark money. Wow. Which funneled roughly $61 million of effectively untraceable money to progressive causes, making it the second largest super PAC donor in 2020. Of Arabella Advisors, the Atlantic noted that the mothership company runs a massive progressive dark money group you've never heard of. It added, Democrats have quietly pulled ahead of Republicans in untraceable political spending. One group helped make it happen. Left leaning Politico has called the 1630 Fund a massive dark money network responsible for boosting Democrats in the 2018 midterm elections, a liberal dark money behemoth, a secretly funded nonprofit, and one of the left's financial hubs, responsible for attacking Republican senators in 2019. So this is an extremely powerful and well-funded organization that's now trying to take away our tax money here in Colorado. I mean, it's absolutely wild that a lot of people just don't even realize that these groups are out there, that they have this much money, this much influence, and how it's this nationwide network.
And And just keep in mind, we're talking about not a presidential race or something like that. We're talking about Colorado, supposedly property taxes, right? And all of these groups, so again, we'll get to that just a little bit later, but all of these just don't make sense. All of this attention, this money from outside, for what's supposed to be on the table, proving there's a whole lot more not being shown. Anyway, keep going.
Right. No, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. For anybody to truly believe that this Democratic dark money organization responsible for shifting national politics is spending $250,000 just out of the goodness of their heart, the kindness of their heart to lower property taxes in Colorado with no other ramifications at all. I mean, that's a total fantasy for people to believe that. That's why looking at this money trail is so important.
Yes,
So I
that's
typed
really
in,
putting the puzzle together. And
yes.
and and you're probably still a couple moves behind, but at least trying to. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I get you. At least we have a peek behind the curtain. Not the whole curtain has been torn down, but we're just peeking behind the curtain here, folks. So this is 1630 fund on Colorado Tracer website. So how much have they spent in Colorado elections over the years? I mean, look at this. This is, if you can see at the bottom, 10 plus pages. I mean, you're talking 92 matching records of what's been reported here from this Washington, D.C. based group, totaling over $21 million. Wow. I mean, these are going into, this is dark
Hard to
money
see, but
coming from
is that almost 22?
21,255,000
Okay.
plus 679,000 in non-monetary contributions. So yeah, really, total contributions of $21,893. So yeah, nearly 22 million. So of course, it's interesting to see how the game's being played. So 1630 Fund, collects big money from donors anonymously, nationally, and then funnels that money into local groups that are pop up little advocacy groups that seem to come out of nowhere around election time with names like Save Our Neighborhoods, Coloradans for Fairness, Strong Colorado for All, Good Jobs, Colorado, Colorado Families First. I mean, look at those names. Who can argue with those groups, right? Sounds like they're really helping us out there in the community when millions and millions of dollars are going into these little organizations to shift Colorado politics and big national money.
That's just your neighbors getting involved with politics there with this. I mean, 2 million, 114.4 million. And the name, let's see, 1 million from Save Our Neighborhoods. Yeah, it does sound friendly, kind of like a Sesame Street thing.
I know. And for people out there, this is just one of these groups. This is just one little organization. I mean, yeah, sure, it's one of the biggest out there, but there's more than just this group as we're seeing here. So they've
So
been,
actually,
go
yeah, we're
ahead.
gonna dig into some more later. Well, anyway, yeah, keep going.
So, I mean, this is a massive organization, really a heavy hitter in Colorado politics, with $22 million being poured in to our state for a variety of ballot measures and candidates. Just wanted to show this quick Politico article from
And it's such a
2021.
clear name. It's such a clear name. 1630 Fund. Like, what does that mean? I'm not even sure. You have any idea?
I don't know. I'm sure the information's out there, but I have no clue.
Well, they've got this other one. They got the thing for CD3, and they come up with these names like that one's 546, that the 1630. Anyway, there must be some dark reason for it. A dark, it's in the same thing. All right, go ahead.
This
Let it
Politico
go.
article from 2021, liberal dark money behemoth funneled more than $400 million in 2020. The subtitle says the 1630 Fund sent the cash to groups that aided Democrats' efforts to unseat then President Donald Trump and Republicans' Senate majority. So, just to give you an idea of $400 million. I mean, 1630, even though it started years ago, really rose to prominence. It became one of the biggest funded groups during the Trump administration. And we're seeing that money trickle down into Colorado. Just absolutely wild. Moving on from 1630, there's a lot more that can be talked about them, and I'd love to get into that in the future. But let's just talk about somebody you may be surprised or may not know about here. And this is $35,000 on this recent campaign finance report from John Icard. He's currently the chairman of the board at the National Western Center. He's been there for nearly 5 years. And then for First Bank, 42 years at First Bank. Wow. I know that's going to be disappointing to a lot of my liberty-minded friends who have used First Bank over the years for campaign accounts for different pro-liberty organizations. But unfortunately, the guy at the head of it, president and CEO for 17 and a half years, board of directors, current chairman of the board for nearly 4 years, has spent $35,000 of his money in support of Proposition HH to rob you of your taxpayer bill of rights refunds, to raise your taxes. So really shameful behavior from this guy. What else has John Icard done? Typing him on Tracer. We've seen he's spending, he's no stranger to politics. 74 matching records found with his name on Tracer, $53,000 over the years. So the 35,000 to property tax relief now is just the most recent. Of course, he's given to Colorado Democratic Party, Phil Weiser, our authoritarian state attorney general. I did think it was interesting that he did donate $1,250 to Heidi Ganahl for governor back in 2022. So maybe he was not too happy with Polis, but so it's very unfortunate to see that he's supporting Polis's anti tax refund initiative this year.
And I see a Lakewood city councilor in there that's gonna short-live her city council thing and go run for House district. That Rebecca Stewart. So
Oh,
interesting
wow.
there.
Wow.
Yeah, go
So
ahead. And
moving on
Colorado
here.
too. Never mind.
Colorado
Talk about Colorado.
Colorado Fund for Children Public Education, $100,000. Wow. So there wasn't a lot of information just doing a quick internet search about this group, but I did find on this website about a database for corporations, they were listed on there. So Colorado Fund for Children and Public Education has contributed $100,000 so far on this campaign for Proposition HH. Now, there's an agent name, somebody who's registered with the Secretary of State as being a representative of this company, and that is, I apologize for the name mispronunciation here, but Kathy Mishenzi Rendon is how I would read it. So who is that? I figured that was kind of a thread to follow here. So search for her online, and not too shocking that this individual here is associated with an organization giving $100,000 to take our tax refund money away. So it's no surprise that she is involved with the labor movement in Colorado for 18 years. This woman has spent the last 12 years at the CEA, the Colorado Education Association, the largest teachers union in the state. We've seen that they are very much in support of Proposition HH because they want to take our tax money away from us. And involved with the SEIU Local 105. Actually, she is a lecturer on political science at UC Denver. Those poor college students learning this leftist ideology, but nonetheless, somebody who has a lot of experience, who is now trying to take away our tax money. Any thoughts here, Natalie?
No cozy circles. Just how that's all I gotta say. Cozy circles.
Definitely. It's a small world, and that's what's so interesting. Kind of unwinding these threads, we can really see the connections.
Mhm.
So, kind of mentioned this group earlier here. Somebody I had not heard of at first, but Alterra Mountain Co. Shared Services Inc. $50,000 in support of Proposition HH. They are an organization I had not heard of, but they have contributed this money, and they actually own and operate a range of recreation, hospitality, real estate development, food and beverage, and retail businesses, including Winter Park Resort and Steamboat. So very unfortunate to see. I'm sure a lot of people out there are very familiar with Winter Park and Steamboat. What's interesting on previous video, we did see developers associated with these ski resorts contributing to Proposition HH as well. So definitely that cozy circle, as you had mentioned. Well, Natalie, we lost you there for a second, but glad to see you made it back. So
Yeah.
we just talked about Alterra Mountain Company, Shared Services Incorporated, $50,000. They own Winter Park Resort in Steamboat up in the mountains. Moving on, another big spender here is this Campaign for Great Public Schools. Not too familiar with them. They're actually based out of Beaverton, Oregon. Been around since tax exempt since March 2020, according to ProPublica, $50,000 in support of Proposition HH. Now, this is another big dark money group. It is a 501c4, which means they do not have to disclose their donors, the people who contribute to this organization. So they're bringing in $34.5 million in 2021. And of course, they can use that money how they see fit, distributing it nationally, as we've seen here in support of Proposition HH this year. But a big, big money organization. I don't know if funneling or laundering money is the right way to say it, but not uncommon, very similar to the other groups we've talked about, but just another example of an Oregon-based pro-government education group bringing all this money through in support of their agenda here in our state. I did a quick search for them online, trying to find some more information. There was hard to track down exactly. I'm sure we could with some more time, but looks like they're also known as this City Fund Action. You can see in that highlighted portion at the bottom of the screen, also known as Campaign for Great Public Schools. I think this checks out because they're both in Beaverton, Oregon, both 501c4s. But of course, they support public schools, government schools, with millions and millions of dollars flowing through their group. So those are some of the groups that we've seen. Some of the most recent campaign finance data showing hundreds of thousands of dollars being funneled from out of state special interests into Colorado in support of Proposition HH. You can be sure that these people do not want to reduce your taxes. They're not doing this because they support tax reform or think that the free market is the best way to solve the problems of our society. Instead, they want to see more money going towards government schools, more money coming out of our pockets to push their agenda. So this is just a recap here from Tracer, listing these groups, listing all the contributors to this Proposition HH committee, sorted by dollar amount, largest to smallest. Now, as you can see, look at those, where these money's coming from, right? You got New York, Washington, New York. Of course, you have a couple that are Denver and Boulder, and of course, Blackhawk, Littleton. But for the most part, this big money, these top groups, it's Washington, D.C. and New York-based money coming into Colorado to push this agenda.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this, Natalie?
Um, just well, we're at the summary page, right? So yeah, I mean, if the big overview of this is that this is supposed to be about property tax relief. And as we know, because of the funding from the formula within 48 pages of shenanigans is really to increase the size of government. And that's why we've got the Education Association so involved with this, because they're the ones that there's a carve out in there. Even though school enrollment is declining, this is going to be dumping more money into the schools. So it makes a this whole scam of this being about property tax relief is really a falsehood. But then looking at the business end of it, what is to be gained by Vail Resorts and these different places, especially world resort communities, Oakwood Homes, these different things. Well, the more and more I'm trying to look at that and just piece it together. And I say this as a potential. I don't know if it's really what is occurring. So I'm not making that accusation. This is really just a wild thought, let's call it. Why would all of these developers be so interested in this? A November ballot issue that really doesn't provide good property tax relief. That's why so many different organizations are opposed to it. The special districts, the government, but da da da. Well, looking at what Polis has already indicated, that one of his top priorities will be for the 2024 session, and he's already brought it out into the public, it's not a secret, is the land use bill. So if we have this issue, very large, very contentious issue, like you and I covered over many episodes during earlier this year, Senate Bill 23-213, which was basically, as a reminder and a recap, jamming density down the throat of Colorado, regardless if they did want it or not, even providing for mandatory minimums and different things like that. So I think this is more and more looking like what the support for HH is, because the Polis drumming up that extra support he needs to get his density plan through. And that's what I come away thinking of as the big picture. I mean, we've talked plenty of times about problems with HH, but now it's all about pay to play. And many years ago, there was a ballot issue. That's what we called it, pay to play. It was talking about contributing in and then getting a payoff bonus later from it. And that's what this reminds me of. That's my thoughts.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, these developers, real estate companies, organizations that have a vested interest in developing Colorado's rural and suburban areas, forcing high density housing in these communities that don't want it, are supporting. It seems to me are supporting Proposition HH, like you said, either to get in good with Polis. This is the pay. They're working together for this scheme to transform Colorado and turn it into a high density zone for too much housing, in my opinion. That's quite possible. Very interesting to see. Of course, we'll have to see how this plays out. But it's very interesting to see some of that peek behind the curtain, as we mentioned, just revealing a little bit about who are these moneyed interests behind this organization, behind this group. What do they get out of it? Why are they willing to spend so much money to push this issue?
And part of this may be also just like follow up, um, backroom agreements, let's call it, between the Gallagher Amendment itself and the weight that was placed on the business end of it. And now they're coming through with support here. At the end of the day, I guess actually in big picture, looking at this funding, there is just so much dark out of state money here that is not explained at all as to what the connection is. That's the vast majority. If somebody wants to look at, I mean, on the grassroots side, the opposition to HH side, we have this actually it's really great. There's a bunch of groups very dedicated to defeating HH, ranging from here to it's a list of definitely half dozen, leading towards really a dozen that one way or another, whether they're part of the coalition or whatever, fighting against us. And there's only one group supporting it. So you got all these different money silos with the opponents, because for campaign finance, we do keep, we've got a coalition, but separate groups. Versus the proponents who have one single committee. There's really barely any, you weeded them out, you said, about personal contributions, and just narrowed the scope down to these like groups that you wanted to highlight, right? Were there a lot of personal contributions made to supporting Prop HH that you weeded out to make in this presentation?
No, very, very few, and it's very small dollars. Not too much. I'd have to look exactly, but this is just the largest amount of donations, the biggest money coming in. But there's a little bit. There's a little bit of money, smaller dollar amounts from some individuals, but not much.
Yeah, and I would say that with these being New York groups, it's not the neighbors that we live with that are ones contributing this. These are people that um, are used to being called on for certain issues because they've got very deep pockets and have a very, I don't call it progressive agenda. It's because to me a lot of it is actually a regressive agenda, a destructive agenda. Um, and those are the ones funding this. So uh, for the average voter who isn't exposed to this all the time, this list should be really concerning. I get a little bit numb to it at times because I'm so seeing it for so many years and years. But this should give angst because I think there are a lot of people that when they read from Good Neighbor Coalition or whatever name that they want to slap onto this thing, Coloradans for Education, the Rainbows or whatever, you know, that's not necessarily the group's intent. But when that neighbor down the street's reading that mailer, that's, believing basically like lies, I don't know if you see, lies and lies and like this is the Yes on HH flyer that just came out in the mail. Um, they believe it. So whatever's the name on paid for by issue committee shouldn't be given a lot of uh, what's the word I'm trying to credit for being honest on reflecting what the goal is. And it's sad that the real goal, we all know it, is to take away our taxpayers' Bill of Rights. And this is not clear to the voters. And it's really shaking when people come up and are already starting to hear what their responses are when they just read that ballot question, that we just got a lot of work here over 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of thing that creates more distrust or lessens the trust that people have in government. As soon as you realize how deceptive this ballot measure is, this title written by our state legislators, by politicians in our state government, funded by out-of-state special interests, big money, you see the whole picture of how these people are working really hard to deceive Colorado voters, take our money away from us, and grow the size of government. It's shameful behavior, and it's no surprise that less people trust the government now than they ever have. There's no reason these politicians deserve our trust or respect when they pull these types of shenanigans to negatively impact our communities.
Yeah, and I'm going to mention this now because I don't know that I have mentioned it before. But did Chris DeGroy Kennedy is one of the main sponsors of this bill, and I ran into him 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Went up to him and said I was looking forward to debating him about Prop HH. And I don't know if I shared his response to with you, or at least on a video. Um, so if I haven't, I'll cover it again. Okay. Chris's response. Chris and I have known each other for a long time. He's been state rep for a while now. I think he's termed out finally. Said, Natalie, I'm not trying to get on the Speaker's Bureau to present Prop HH because I am lukewarm on Proposition HH. Said, why is that? And he said, number one reason, because of the shenanigans instead of expressing what the real intent of Prop HH is. And even him, the bill sponsor, wasn't comfortable. What is wrapped around this deceptive issue and the real purpose and damages that are, as in legal world, they say it, wrapped within the coils of the measure. So, sorry, I had to go off a little bit, but here it is. The sponsors even lukewarm and agrees it's a deceptive measure. How much more can one explain to give us a reason to vote no on this thing?
Politicians pushing short-term political gain at the expense of voter trust in the long term. I mean, it's not a recipe for a healthy democracy or a healthy government by the people when the people continuously are betrayed by the politicians elected to represent them.
Yeah. Talk about election integrity, huh? Talk about election integrity. Come on, Jenna. Let's talk about that part, huh?
Just a quick teaser for a video we'd like to do in the future here shortly, in the near future, hopefully. But talking about the expenditures, so this Pro-Pop Proposition HH group obviously has millions of dollars at their disposal. So how are they spending it? Obviously, you've seen the mailers come out, you've seen TV ads, internet ads, some of them extremely poorly done, which is I'm kind of thankful for, but nonetheless, overall deceptive. Natalie, you pointed this out previously that so we just want to give people a little teaser about maybe talking about some expenditures, how they're spending their money, where it's going from. There's been nearly $30,000 spent to a fundraising consultant. So this Proposition HH group, not only do they have millions of dollars, but they can throw $30,000 nearly to this group called GiveWise to help them raise even more money. What does a fundraising consultant even do in this circumstance? I'm not entirely sure, except maybe coordinate dark money groups donating money. But nonetheless, what do you think, Natalie?
Well, I'm glad we're going to cover it because people do. It's interesting when you're tying the whole web together, not only looking at the contributions, but looking at the expenditures, because then it connects that web. And at the end of the day, to me, we we've been thrown around massive numbers, right? A million here, million there, million. I mean, just like it's like funny money, right? Um, it really proves that it's easy to get caught up in the notion that these are big money games and outside of the control of the average voter. But that is not true. Um, I think it's very clear that they don't really have that many volunteers for the property tax relief now. That's why there's so much out of state, dark, deep Washington, D.C., New York money tied to it, and very little volunteers. I don't know of any canvassing they're doing. So for us to counter some of that and to balance it, it really does come down to activists getting up to speed and just having the quick conversation with the neighbor and just saying, hey, if you haven't voted yet, can I just give you a heads up? You're going to read a really deceiving question. And please look at it further. I know you're hurrying to the grocery store or going to pick up your kid or whatever, but just having that connection, that grassroots message, posting it on Nextdoor, all the different little Reddit, interesting conversation. This is something I was going to mention before. Like on Reddit, I'm getting some feeds in where there's people getting in it and they're like, this doesn't make sense to me. Prop HH has really rich people, that's their perception, fighting for taxpayers and fighting for renters. And I don't understand that because as I really read this issue, it looks like the Democrats are the ones that are just fighting for the well off. And it was so interesting to see because that was their perception. And when they really started to understand the issue and look past those labels that have been applied to the different groups, they understand the real thing is the conservatives were fighting for them, but it just for the taxpayers. But it confused them because they had read or believed this type of mental thought that rich only fight for rich, and it confused them when they found out actually that people with some deeper pockets were just truly trying to fight for taxpayers, and it was like unveiling something to them. I hope that made sense, but my main point is these are interesting conversations happening on a lot of these alternative type of media platforms. And so if people are just talking to their circle, reach outside the circle, whether it is some of these other things like Reddit, chime into a conversation. I'm worried about the polling numbers. I haven't exactly gotten them, but we started off in a tough spot, and I think it's turning around, but we have more work to do. So I'm sorry I went off a little bit, but it's a good time to advocate for that communication, not just watching YouTube, but sharing this video. Subscribe to this, to Brandon in Free State. Share these things, the other videos he's done, and spread the word about HH.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you, Natalie. Thank you for all your hard work and your dedication. I know you're one of the Liberty leaders pushing back against this horrible, deceptive ballot measure. And thank you for all your hard work. And yeah, people, tell everybody vote no on Proposition HH. But we'll talk again soon. And appreciate you joining me, Natalie. Let's we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks.